London point of view, our issue is very similar to the other speakers, except it is obviously on a greater scale because we are dealing with an even bigger influx of population. And it is the population which is one of the big drivers for all this. We've already gone up by 13% over the last 9 years. We will actually surpass our previous population peak, which was actually in 1939 at 8.6 million, and we'll do that very early next year. And we'll pass 9 million by 2020, and we'll pass 10 million fairly soon after 2030. So that growth in population is driving an awful lot of the things that we're doing. And of course, for us, like everybody else, overcrowding of housing stock, getting new housing stock in place, making it sure it's affordable for all groups. In fact, we did a study the other day, and we've worked out that the only area where we don't have a shortage of housing is in categories in excess of 2 million, which is what, $3 million. So that's the area where there is actually a surplus. Everywhere else, we're very, very short. So that, I think, gives you an indication of the sort of challenges that we face. But if you look at the age profile, it's a similar profile. We're going to triple the over 90s by 2030. We'll have about 140,000. And of course, that's also an indication of what's happening to longevity right across the population. And that's why we're having to look very closely at the type of housing stock that we provide for older people. And we're trying to build that into our planning system so that we can actually drive the production of housing stocks for that group. Because that, of course, also frees up housing stock elsewhere in the system, which would may be more suitable for families. And there are all sorts of challenges, which many of you know, to actually get that kind of stock which people want. But we also have a problem about longevity. I mean, for example, the age profile for women in the city, in one part of East London, in Newham, the age profile is 77.5 years. But if you go to Mayfair in central London, it's 93.7 years. So that also tells you something about wealth. And in fact, we have a calculation, which as you go along one of our metro lines, as it goes east, your chances of age longevity drops a year for every 2 stations that you go through. So yeah, we do have a few challenges. On the children front, we are also breeding quite significantly. And of course, a lot of our population growth isn't immigration any longer. It is actually about birth rate, and the birth rate is going up quite significantly. And then we have the problem of the mix of London, 300 languages, 200 nationalities. So it is a very international city. However, the European Commission's City Perception Study showed that 87% of people actually liked living in London, and they were quite happy with it. And I think that's quite a significant point to make. And of course, quality of life does matter. It matters in jobs, it matters in housing, it matters in the economic vibrancy of the city, and these things go together. And when we've done some studies on this, rather, again, like colleagues on the platform here, one of the indicators that has come back as really important has been the green spaces. It is about parks, open spaces, trees. And if you actually go to our tallest building in London, the Shard, and you actually stood on the viewing gallery and looked down on the city, the one thing you would be quite surprised about is just how green London is. It is one of the greener cities in Europe. I'm not going to claim to be greener than my colleagues, because I'm not quite sure that would be true. But we are certainly a green city. And it is now, for us in policy terms, about expanding and growing parks, improving the quality of those parks, about creating new, what we call pocket parks, on spaces of land around the city. And it is about tree planting, which we're doing to enormous quantities. And when I talk about those pocket parks, I mean, we're building 100 pocket parks at the moment. So you can see how seriously we take that. But if I take and look at health profiles again, and as an issue for the city, I mean, if we looked at two particular studies, one on diabetes, which is a problem, I think, for a number of us, and also obesity. And you look at those two together, for the cost for diabetes to the London economy is £3 billion a year, and the cost of obesity is £4 billion a year. And we may be dealing with the diabetes problem, we're certainly not dealing with the obesity problem, which of course is a cost which is rocketing all the time. And you can see at that cost level of £4 billion, it is very, very significant as a cost factor to the city. So for us, how do we get people healthier? How do we get people moving around? For us, it's about cycling. For those of you who know London, you will have seen the change in cycling in the city. There are large numbers out there. We have created cycle hire schemes, which we're increasing to 110,000 cycles within our cycle hire scheme in the centre of the city. We're creating more parking places for cycling. We are using our planning powers to make it very difficult to build car parking. And indeed, some of our tallest buildings recently completed. For example, the Heron Tower, it's one of our tall ones. I think it's down to 6 car parking spaces for one of the largest office blocks in the city, and it goes on like this. We are not creating car parking. We are, however, creating lots of cycle places. And we are, again, like colleagues, trying to drive people both onto public transport and onto walking, onto cycling, finding other modes of travel which are both healthier and both for the individual and healthier for the city by improving air quality and everything else that goes with it. So those are our big challenges. And I think that, as you can see, I think for all of us, we want to try and improve the quality of life of the city, because if we can improve that quality of life, we will also be improving the individual's life expectancy and the quality of their individual lives as well.